Good day, Scouts and Scouters. This module covers the very basics of the compass, an instrument that helps us find direction relative to a known identifiable feature. Let's explore that concept. Okay, we know about the four cardinal geographic directions, north, south, east, and west, but to work with a compass, we have to deal with that other north. Wait, what other north? Okay, compasses do not work with geographic north. They work with magnetic north, a pole determined by the location of molten iron within the Earth. This is the known identifiable feature to which we alluded earlier. Magnetic north is near, but in a different location from geographic north. We're going to talk more about the importance of that fact in the maps video presentation. But right now, let's take a look at the difference in location between those two poles as we know them today. So here we have a schematic view looking down at the top of the Earth. We can see the geographic North Pole and the magnetic North Pole in the position where it was determined early in 2020, near to the geographic North Pole, but in a slightly different location from it. Okay, now we know about magnetic north. Now it's also important to know that the compass contains a freely movable magnetized needle that points toward the magnetic North Pole. This is the basic and overriding principle of how a compass works. The needle indicates the direction of magnetic north. All functions of the compass are based on that one principle. Compasses come in many different shapes, sizes, and complexities that serve different needs, but all work on the same basic principle. The needle points to magnetic north. Here we can see some simple compasses, an orienteering compass, the kind that we use most often in scouting, and military compasses and surveyors' compasses that are designed to detect differences in direction much finer than we'll have to worry about in scouting. Let's take a look at the basic anatomy of an orienteering compass. As we just said, the type of compass most commonly used in scouting, and most commonly used in the great sports of orienteering and rogating. Look that last one up, by the way. Orienteering and rogating are great fun and are good ways to reinforce the skill of using a map and compass together. So let's take a look at the basic anatomy, and then we'll discuss the basic parts in more detail. So here's an example of a simple orienteering compass. You've got the clear base plate on which is etched the direction of travel arrow and the index mark at the very bottom of the direction of travel arrow. There's the rotating compass housing with degree marks on it, and the compass housing is manually rotatable. Also part of the compass housing is the orienting arrow, which we're going to call the dog house. If you look at it, you can kind of imagine a very tall, skinny house with a little roof on the top, the dog house. And toward the bottom of that orienting arrow, you're going to see the letters MN, which stands for magnetic north. And then finally, there's the magnetic needle, which we're going to call the dog. And at some point, we're going to want to put the dog in the doghouse. We're going to want to put the magnetic needle in alignment with the orienting arrow. Let's look at a little more detail. The base plate, the clear base plate, holds all of the basic parts of the compass together and may contain additional tools or information, such as additional scales on the side. The direction of travel arrow indicates the way to go when the compass is used properly. Direction of travel arrow points toward the feature or object of interest and indicates the direction when you're doing route planning. The index mark is the point on the base plate at the bottom of the direction of travel arrow where you read directions in degrees on the rotating compass housing. The orienting arrow, we've also called the dog house, is part of the rotating compass housing and is used in conjunction with the freely turning magnetic needle, also called the dog, to find directions. We're going to talk more later about putting the dog in the doghouse, which is another fundamental concept in using the compass properly. Often we get questions about, well, the needle points to magnetic north, but which end of the needle is that? On virtually all compasses, the red half of the needle points to magnetic north regardless of the color of the other half. The other half may be white, as shown here, maybe yellow, silver, gold, blue, black, and sometimes other colors. But the red half of the needle, or the half that contains red at some point on that half, is the one that points to magnetic north. Red points to magnetic north. Because the magnetic needle is, well, magnetic, it can be attracted to things other than magnetic north. So be sure to keep knives, belt buckles, and other objects containing iron or steel, and especially carbon steel, away from the compass while using it to avoid incorrect readings and potential embarrassment, or in some serious situations, potential tragedy. So we told you that even though the needle points to magnetic north, there are some things that can affect the accuracy of that reading. We talked about things that are made of iron or steel. So just so you know that this is for real, here is my carbon steel kitchen knife. Wow, look at that. Carbon steel kitchen knife. Some of you are saying, yeah, well, that's a big kitchen knife. Of course, that might have some effect on the compass. Well, here's my little pocket knife. Woo. Bingo. Small pocket knife. Wristwatch. Eagle Mentor pin. And as a final example, a container full of AAA batteries. Whoa. See that again. Wow. So, yes, the needle points to magnetic north unless it's interfered with by things that contain iron or steel, or may generate a magnetic or electrical field of their own. So just be careful. Before we show some examples of how to use the compass in the field, let's take a moment for a short note on terms. You will often hear the word bearing, or you may see or hear about the word azimuth, a word that we're not going to use in the future. Both bearing and azimuth mean a direction in degrees clockwise from north. This could be geographic north or magnetic north. And in the case of the compass, it means specifically direction in degrees clockwise from magnetic north. So when you see or hear take a bearing or here is a bearing or similar phrases, realize that it's just a short way of talking about a direction in degrees relative to magnetic north. Okay. Let's take a look at some basic maneuvers that can be used with a compass. There are two basic maneuvers or processes that you can perform with a compass that are the basis for everything else that you do, simple or complicated. Find, that is identify or determine, find the bearing from one point to another point, where from is where you start and to is where you want to go. For example, what is the bearing from where you are standing to that hill in the distance? The second basic maneuver is, given a bearing, what do I do to face in that direction? For example, from the flagpole on the parade ground, what kind of tree do you see at a bearing of 327 degrees? This is similar to the situation above, except that instead of finding the bearing from the flagpole to the tree, you are given the bearing from the flagpole to a tree and asked to identify the specific tree at that bearing. Now it's important because that tree may be one of several in the general area, but the bearing helps you to identify which one in particular. Let's take a look at some examples of these two maneuvers. Okay, we're going to do some exercises now to show you the basic maneuvers that you can do with a compass. But before we start, let's take a look at this orienteering compass. It's a Sunto. It's a nice compass. You'll notice the compass housing is marked in gradations every 2 degrees. Some Scout compasses are smaller than this. They have a smaller housing and are only marked in gradations of 5 degrees. But this one has 2-degree gradation markings. The only downside is that we will have to interpolate between the markings to find odd numbers. We're now going to see 2 examples of maneuver number 1, finding the bearing from one point to another point. Okay, you're going to have to forgive the tripod legs being in the picture. One of the limitations of using relatively inexpensive gear. So the first thing we'd like to do is find the bearing from where we're standing to that pear tree right there, the one with the yellow coffee can at the base. There's the coffee can. We want to find the bearing from where we're standing, essentially to that coffee can. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold the compass and we're going to point the direction of travel arrow at the coffee can. Point the direction of travel arrow at the coffee can. And then we're going to turn the compass housing until the dog is in the doghouse. All right, we check again, make sure the direction of travel arrow is pointed at the coffee can. Make sure the dog is in the doghouse, and then we can read the bearing at the index mark, and that looks like, wow, 92 degrees. So that coffee can is at a bearing of 92 degrees from where we're standing. Okay, let's try another one just to make sure that we have the concept down. So we're going to turn around here a little bit, and we want to find the bearing from where we're standing, again, to the coffee can, but this time it's on that fire pit right there. There's the coffee can on the fire pit. So we're going to start out by pointing the direction of travel arrow at the coffee can. Let's make sure. Yep, direction of travel arrow is pointed at the coffee can on the fire pit. Then we're going to rotate the compass housing, what? Until the dog is in the doghouse. We're rotating. Okay, we check, make sure the direction of travel arrow is pointed at the coffee can. Make sure the dog is in the doghouse. It is, and now we can read the bearing. And the bearing from where we're standing to that coffee can looks like 198 degrees. So the bearing from where we're standing to that coffee can is 198 degrees. Okay, now let's see 2 examples of maneuver number 2. Given a bearing, how do I turn to face in that direction? Okay, for the second maneuver, we're going to be given a bearing, and then we have to try to figure out how to face in that direction and perhaps identify whatever object or feature of interest is at that bearing. So we're told that there's an object of aquatic interest at a bearing of about 150 degrees. So what are we going to do to be able to find that object, that bearing and that object? All right, we have our compass. What we do is we turn the compass housing until 150 degrees is at the index mark, right there. 150 degrees is at the index mark. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn until the dog is in the doghouse. All right. The dog is in the doghouse. The direction of travel arrow is pointing at 150 degrees. What do we think we see there? Oh, there's a canoe at a bearing of about 150 degrees. So there's our object of aquatic interest. Well, let's try that one more time just to make sure that that we've got it down. Our errant coffee can has escaped from the fire pit, but we're told that we've located it at a bearing of about 58 degrees from where we're standing. So how are we going to go about finding that errant coffee can? Okay, well, let's start by putting 58 degrees at the index mark at the base of the direction of travel arrow. There we go. 58 degrees is at the index mark at the base of the direction of travel arrow. Now we're going to turn until the dog is in the doghouse. And when the dog is in the doghouse, we will be facing a bearing of 58 degrees. All right, let's see if our errant coffee can is there. Aha! There it is. The coffee can at a bearing of 58 degrees. And that's how you perform maneuver number 2. At this point, let's review the 4 basic concepts for using the compass. Learn these and you'll be able to use a compass effectively wherever you are. Number 1, and most important, the compass needle points to magnetic north. This is the basis for everything else that you do with a compass. Number 2, all directions are in degrees clockwise from magnetic north. All directions are relative to magnetic north. 3, the direction of travel arrow points the way. And number 4, always put the dog in the doghouse. One final hint about using your compass in the field. Okay, one last hint about using your compass. When you go to point the direction of travel arrow, don't do it by cocking your wrist. That's going to lead to errors. What you should do, hold the compass with both hands, sort of tent your index fingers over the top so that they're pointing in the same direction as the direction of travel arrow. Lock your elbows against your sides, and then you can see my feet. When you go to turn your whole body by moving your feet. Turn your whole body, moving your feet, so that when you look up, you're always looking in the same direction as the direction of travel arrow. Move your feet and your whole body so that you're always facing the direction of travel arrow. You now have the very basics about the compass and how to use it. From here you should be able to go to other sources like your Scout Handbook and find more information, tips, and tricks. When used together with a map, which is the subject of another video module, you have powerful tools that will help you to navigate your field and backcountry adventures. We hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial on using the compass and that you'll see the other videos in this series. Taken all together, they should prepare you to go out into the field and use map and compass to maximize your enjoyment of the outdoors.